Hey everyone, today I want to talk about some of my top strategies to stop being so addicted to your phone. Let's start with a little bit of context here first, because a lot of people say, I'm not really that addicted to my phone. I would beg to differ. There are all sorts of studies out there showing the average American spends 11 hours per day on screens. Not only that, 50% of teenagers now describe themselves as having a significant addiction to their smartphone. And when people are asked, would you rather spend an entire month without your phone or your pet? 40% of people choose their phone over their pet. Would you rather spend an entire month without your phone or your significant other? 44% of people choose their phone over their significant other. So we are clearly experiencing a widespread cultural phenomenon of device addiction. And the question is, how do we break the addiction? How do we break the craving? So today I'm going to talk about a few tools we can use, and they're all based on the idea of creating a new behavioral architecture for your life. That's one of the terms coming out of the science of habit formation. And the basic idea is this: if we want to break any sort of craving or any sort of addiction, we want to put some sort of friction between us and the context where we tend to indulge in that addiction or craving. And we want to take away friction between us and the tasks or the things we do in life that matter most to us. Spending time with our family, focused work, etc. So how then do we create this friction between us and our devices? Well, let's start with our physical environment. There are a bunch of different things we can do here that are super helpful. Thing one, if you're only going to do one thing, do this. Kick your phones out of your bedroom. A lot of people say, this is crazy, I could never do that. My phone is my alarm. I have a very simple solution. You can buy a $5 alarm clock on Amazon, and that will be your alarm. That way, when you wake up, your phone isn't the first thing you touch. It's in a different room. You now have a little bit of space from it. And also, I find that my sleep is way better when I don't have my smartphone just sitting there 2 feet away from my head all night. So that's thing one. Thing two, you can think about addiction strategies that go under the heading of self-binding tactics. So the basic idea here is these are ways that we can bind ourselves in advance so that the craving isn't even available to us. My favorite way of doing this is using a thing called the K-safe. So this is basically a kitchen safe where you can put all of your devices into this container. You then specify the amount of time you want the container to lock, 2 hours, 3 hours, an entire day, push the button, and there is no way to get your devices short of taking a sledgehammer to this container until the 2 hours are up or the 3 hours are up. I find when I do this, it's partially terrifying, but partially liberating, because now I don't even have to worry about that urge to grab my device. I can't do it. Another thing that you can think about for your physical space in your family is coming up with a family screen contract. We've done this in our house, and basically it's just an exercise of coming up with the guidelines for your family around screen usage. So things like, what's our relationship to devices during meals? When do we have screen-free time? When we watch TV or a movie together or play a game, do we put our devices in something like the K-safe? These are all rules you can come up with together, and we found that by coming up with these rules together, everybody feels okay living within these guidelines. So that's various strategies we can use for our physical environment. We can also think about our digital environment itself. So how can we design our phone such that there's friction between us and the apps that we crave most? Well, first of all, you can take all of the apps that you crave most, social media, the distractions, news apps, things like that, put them as far away from your home screen as possible. I put them like 4 or 5 screens away. You can also use things like Do Not Disturb or Focus Mode on iOS devices. These will help you be less at the effect of interruptions, text messages, things like that. And you can also, if you're really, really hardcore, which in full disclosure I am not, You can even use grayscale mode on your phone so that it's no longer colorful and bright. It's just like this black and white experience. There's also a new technology out there. I've got one right here on my desk actually called the Brick that I've been experimenting with. This is a system that allows you to basically identify all of your distracting apps, and each time you check in with the Brick, you touch your phone to the Brick, for however long you decide to be on the Brick, you cannot touch those distracting apps. So that might be another thing you try out. So these are all things you can try out in the digital space. And then the last thing I would say is there are things we can do in the space of time. And one of my favorite practices here is to actually change our relationship to time such that we schedule time in our day, every single day, for distraction. I call this dopamine dessert, and I've got a whole nother video on this. But the shorthand explanation here is that what we can do is set aside, maybe it's a half hour, maybe it's 45 minutes, maybe it's an hour each day reserved for distraction. So in other words, for that half hour or hour, you can do whatever you want. You can gorge on a buffet of your favorite mind snacks, your favorite distracting apps, Instagram, TikTok, ESPN app, whatever it is for you that sort of lights up your dopamine receptors in your brain. You can do that as much as you want during that hour, during that half hour. What that does is it liberates you throughout the rest of your day. You don't have to check those apps all the time. Why? Because you've got dopamine dessert coming up. So I hope these strategies are helpful for you. And basically, you can also think about how to apply these principles to creating new strategies that maybe I haven't talked about by just thinking about this. You want to create friction between you and the things that distract you, between you and those screen cravings or screen addiction. So anything you can do in your day to create that kind of friction is going to be useful for overcoming this craving that all of us are experiencing to our devices. If you want to learn more about these tools, I talk a lot about them in my new book, Open, Living with an Expansive Mind in a Distracted World. And of course, you can subscribe to the channel here where I talk about these sorts of practices all the time.